For months, she parked in his driveway like it was her right, until he called the tow truck twice. What happened next was a downfall so public, the entire neighborhood watched. Reginald Reggie Carter was a patient man. He had to be. He spent his days managing a classroom full of middle schoolers in Lakeland, Florida, trying to make science exciting for kids who cared more about their phones than the periodic table. He had a system, a rhythm to his life, and he liked it that way. His home was his sanctuary, a modest but well-kept single-story brick house with a neatly trimmed lawn, a driveway just big enough for his car and the occasional visitor. It wasn't much, but it was his, a place where he could unwind, grade papers, and watch the game in peace. Until Blythe Vanderholt decided his driveway was hers. It started small. The first time Reggie saw her silver Lexus RX sitting in his driveway, he figured it was a mistake. Maybe she had guests over and they needed to shuffle cars around. No big deal, he let it go. But then it happened again. And again. At first, Blythe always had a reason. She was just running inside for a second or dropping something off. She'd flash a tight-lipped smile, a dismissive wave of her manicured hand, and that was supposed to be enough. Reggie didn't like it, but he wasn't the type to make a fuss over nothing. Until the day he came home from work, tired, hungry, and ready to collapse on the couch, only to find her Lexus parked dead center in his driveway again. This time there was no one in sight. Reggie took a deep breath, exhaled through his nose, and knocked on Blythe's door. She answered with an expression that made it clear she already knew why he was there. "Reggie, what's wrong?" she asked, feigning surprise, her tone dripping with condescension. Reggie nodded toward his driveway. "Your car's in my spot again." Blythe blinked as if the thought had never occurred to her. "Oh, I was just, well, I had a delivery and the driver needed room to back out." She smiled like that explanation should have ended the conversation. "You don't mind, do you?" "I do, actually," Reggie said calmly. "I need you to stop parking in my driveway." Blythe sighed dramatically. "Well, I live right next door, Reggie. It's not like I'm parking on some stranger's property." "You're parking on mine," Blythe scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Are you really that bothered by a car sitting there for a few minutes?" "It's not a few minutes. It keeps happening," Reggie said, crossing his arms. "And I need it to stop." She let out a sharp laugh. All right, no need to get all worked up. I'll move it." She did, that time. But it didn't stop. Over the next few weeks, the pattern continued. Reggie would come home and find her car exactly where it shouldn't be. If he left a note, it disappeared. If he knocked on her door, she suddenly wasn't home. One evening, after a long day at school, Reggie pulled up to see not just her car in his driveway, but another one. Some shiny black BMW that definitely didn't belong to him. Enough was enough. Reggie parked on the street, grabbed his phone, and snapped a picture. Then he knocked on Blythe's door, harder this time. She opened it with zero urgency, her face a mask of mild annoyance. "Reggie," she said, dragging out his name like he was inconveniencing her. "Whose car is that?" he asked, pointing toward his driveway. "Oh, that's my friend's," she said breezily. "We were having a little get-together and, well, you weren't home. Thought it wouldn't matter." "It does matter," Reggie said, his patience thinning. "This isn't a parking lot, Blythe. This is my home." She folded her arms, tilting her head like he was the unreasonable one. "Well, you should have said something earlier." "I would have moved it." Reggie clenched his jaw, inhaling slowly. "I am saying something right now. Move the car." Blythe rolled her eyes but finally stepped inside to call her friend. Reggie waited 10 minutes. 15. At 20 minutes, he was done waiting. He walked back to his house, sat on his couch, and started looking up the number for the local towing company. But this was just the beginning. Reggie wasn't the type to stir up drama. He lived his life quietly, minded his business, and gave people the benefit of the doubt. But Blythe Vanderholt had officially crossed the line. The next morning, he left early for work, but not before calling the HOA. He didn't expect much. HOAs were notorious for siding with the people who had the most influence. And Blythe? She was practically royalty on the board. Still, he figured it was worth a shot. The response was exactly what he expected. "Sir, unless there is physical damage to your property, we really don't get involved in neighbor disputes," said the bored-sounding woman on the other end. "Have you tried speaking with her?" Reggie sighed. "That's all I've been doing." "Well, we can send a courtesy email, but that's about it." A courtesy email. Yeah, that'd teach her. But Reggie wasn't going to waste his energy arguing. He thanked the woman and hung up. If the HOA wasn't going to do anything, he'd handle it himself. He left one last note on Blythe's windshield that morning. Big bold letters, "Do not park here again." When he came home that evening, the note was gone. Her Lexus RX was not only in his driveway again, but parked at an angle like she didn't even care. Reggie pulled his car onto the street, staring in disbelief. She wasn't even trying to be subtle anymore. Fuming, he walked up to her door and knocked hard. It took a full minute before she finally answered, wine glass in hand, looking like she'd just been in the middle of a relaxing evening. "Reggie," she said, drawing out his name like he was an interruption to her night. "I need you to move your car." She took a slow sip of wine before responding. "Oh yeah, about that. I meant to text you, but I figured you wouldn't mind since you always park on the street anyway." Reggie's fingers flexed at his sides. He forced himself to stay calm. "I do mind. This is my property, Blythe." She let out a sharp laugh, shaking her head like he was being unreasonable. "Reggie, seriously, you're getting bent out of shape over a driveway." He took a step closer. "No, I'm getting bent out of shape because I've told you over and over to stop doing this much and you keep ignoring me." Blythe rolled her eyes, swirling the wine in her glass. "All right, fine. I'll move it." Reggie exhaled, willing himself to let it go. He turned to head back to his house, and then Blythe muttered something under her breath. He didn't catch every word, but the tone was enough. Reggie turned back toward her. "What did you just say?" Blythe gave him an innocent look. "Nothing." "No, you said something," she smirked. "I just don't get why some people are so uptight about the smallest things." There it was, that smug, passive-aggressive entitlement that made his blood boil. Reggie didn't say another word. He just walked back to his house, pulled out his phone, and saved the number for the towing company. That night, as he sat on his couch grading papers, his mind kept replaying the conversation, the dismissiveness, the arrogance, the sheer audacity. She wasn't going to stop, and Reggie was done playing nice. The next time Blythe parked in his driveway, Reggie didn't knock. He didn't leave a note. He didn't call her. He called the tow truck instead. It was a Friday evening, and he had just pulled up after a long week at school. Exhausted, he spotted her Lexus RX sitting in his driveway like it belonged there, and suddenly he wasn't tired anymore. He parked his car down the street, dialed the towing company, and gave them one simple instruction: "I need this car gone." The tow truck arrived in less than 20 minutes. It was almost poetic how quickly it happened. The driver hopped out, assessed the situation, and nodded. "She's parked in your driveway?" "Yep," Reggie confirmed. "Got proof of ownership?" Reggie pulled out his property deed. He'd come prepared. "All right," the driver said. "Let's hook her up." Within minutes, Blythe's luxury SUV was lifted off the ground, wheels locked in place. Reggie crossed his arms, watching with satisfaction as the truck pulled away, her car disappearing down the street. He didn't know what kind of reaction to expect. Would she show up screaming? Call the cops? Pretend she had no idea what happened? Turns out he didn't have to wait long to find out. About an hour later, just as he was settling in for the night, there was a loud pounding on his front door. Bam! 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 The whole frame rattled under the force of Blythe's fists. Reggie didn't rush. He took his time, standing up, stretching, making her wait. Then he opened the door. Blythe stood there in flip-flops and silk pajama pants, looking absolutely livid. Her phone was clutched in her hand, her perfectly styled blonde bob slightly out of place. "Where's my car?" she snapped. Reggie tilted his head. "Oh, you mean the one that was illegally parked in my driveway?" Her nostrils flared. "Don't play games with me, Reggie. Where is my car?" He shrugged casually. "Towed." She stared at him, mouth falling open in disbelief. "You did what?" "You heard me," Reggie said calmly. "You wouldn't stop parking in my driveway, so I had it removed." Simple as that. Blythe let out a sharp, hysterical laugh. "Oh, you are going to pay for this. Do you know who I am? I'm on the HOA board." "I have connections, Reggie." He gave her a slow blink. "Good for you. Your car's at Sunshine Towing off Orange Blossom Trail. Have a good night." With that, he shut the door. But Blythe wasn't done. She stood outside his house for a full 10 minutes, ranting and raving, switching between outrage and thinly veiled threats. She even called the cops. When the officers arrived, though, they barely gave her the time of day. "You had her car towed from your own property?" one of them asked. "Yep," Reggie confirmed, handing over his deed. The officer glanced at the document, then turned to Blythe. "Ma'am, he's within his rights. If you want your car back, you'll need to pay the impound fee." The way Blythe's face turned red, Reggie would have paid good money to frame that moment. But something told him this wasn't over, and he was right. Reggie thought that after getting her car towed, Blythe would finally get the message. She didn't. If anything, she doubled down. It started small, little passive-aggressive digs that were more annoying than anything else. First, she left a note on his door written in bright red marker, as if she thought she was making some kind of legal statement. "This is a community. We should all be more considerate of our neighbors." Reggie tossed it straight into the trash. Then came the HOA complaints. A letter arrived in his mailbox a few days later, claiming his front porch plants were in violation of community aesthetics. Reggie laughed out loud. The same potted ferns that had been there for 2 years were suddenly a problem. Then another letter. His garbage bins were left out too long. And another. His mailbox paint was fading. By the 4th letter, Reggie wasn't even mad. He was impressed. She was putting in real effort, but the worst part came when she started calling security on him. One evening, Reggie was watering his lawn when a white security SUV pulled up, lights flashing. A tall, middle-aged officer stepped out, adjusting his belt like he had something important to do. "You live here, sir?" he asked. Reggie frowned. "Yeah, why?" The officer cleared his throat. "We received a call about some, suspicious activity." Reggie let out a slow breath. Suspicious? That word again. He turned his head, and sure enough, there she was. Blythe Vanderholt stood on her porch, arms crossed, pretending to be oblivious. Reggie gave the officer a dry look. "So watering my lawn is suspicious now?" Now the officer had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Look, sir." "Save it," Reggie cut him off. "I already know who called. Tell her to find a new hobby." The officer sighed, nodded, and walked back to his car. "And Blythe?" She smiled like she had won. Reggie wasn't having it. He marched straight up to her porch. "Blythe," he said firmly. She blinked, feigning innocence. "Oh, everything okay, Reggie? I saw security here. Hope nothing serious happened." He folded his arms. "You know damn well why they were here," Blythe gasped. "Reggie, no need to be rude. I was just concerned. We have a duty to watch out for our neighborhood, don't we?" He stared at her. She wanted a reaction. She wanted him to lose his temper, to give her something she could use against him. So he did the one thing she didn't expect. He smirked. Calm, controlled, amused. "I'm done playing games, Blythe," he said, voice low and steady. "I gave you more chances than you deserved, but you keep pushing. So let's see what happens when I push back." For the first time, she looked unsure, and she should have been. Because the next time she parked in his driveway, Reggie wasn't just going to tow her car, he was going to make sure it hurt. Reggie didn't have to wait long. Just 1 week later, on a Saturday afternoon, he pulled into his street whistling to himself after a good morning at the gym, only to see Blythe's Lexus RX parked dead center in his driveway again, blocking his garage. It was bold, disrespectful. And this time his entire family was on their way over for a cookout. Reggie sat in his car for a moment, just staring. Then he put it in park, stepped out, and made one call. "Hey, this is Reggie Carter," he said calmly. "I need a car towed." "Same location as last time?" The dispatcher chuckled. "Let me guess, same car too?" "You got it. We'll be there in 15. Reggie smiled. This time Blythe was going to learn. He grabbed his folding chairs from the trunk and sat right on his porch, arms crossed, waiting. Minutes later, the tow truck rolled up, fast and efficient. The driver stepped out, adjusting his gloves. "We doing this again?" he asked. "Looks like it," Reggie replied, gesturing toward the car. The driver shook his head, smirking. Some people never learn. With zero hesitation, he hooked up Blythe's Lexus and started lifting it onto the truck. That's when she came storming out, screeching like she'd just caught someone robbing her house. "Stop, what are you doing?" Reggie leaned back in his chair, sipping from his water bottle like he had all the time in the world. The tow driver didn't even look at her, he was already strapping the wheels down. Blythe marched up to Reggie, eyes blazing. "You called the tow truck again?" He arched an eyebrow. "You parked in my driveway again." Her hands balled into fists. "I have guests over." "There was no street parking." Reggie tilted his head. Not my problem. She let out a frustrated growl. You're being petty, Reggie. I told you I would have moved it. He sighed, calm and casual. See, here's the thing, Blythe. You've told me that before. And yet here we are. Her face turned red, an alarming shade. You don't understand what you're doing, she hissed. I have connections. I can make things very difficult for you. Reggie laughed, actually laughed. Oh, Blythe, he said, shaking his head. I don't think you understand what's happening here. He gestured toward the tow truck. Your car, it's already gone. She whirled around, and sure enough, the Lexus was halfway down the street. She let out a piercing shriek. You're going to regret this, she snapped. Reggie stood up slowly, dusting off his jeans. No, Blythe, you are. She stood there seething as he turned and walked inside just as his family started arriving. As they greeted him at the door, laughing and catching up, Blythe stood on her porch, alone. But she wasn't done yet, and Reggie knew it. The second tow should have ended things. But Blythe wasn't the type to take a loss quietly. She wanted revenge, and this time she wanted the whole neighborhood to watch. By Monday morning, Reggie was the villain, or at least that's what Blythe wanted people to believe. The HOA board, her friends, sent out a community-wide email about recent neighborly disputes that had escalated unnecessarily. The wording was carefully crafted, passive-aggressive but vague, making it seem like Reggie was the one causing trouble. Then the flyers started appearing. Yes, flyers, printed, laminated, and taped to every mailbox on the street. Is this the kind of community we want? Do we tow our neighbors instead of talking to them? It was laughable. Reggie yanked the one off his own mailbox and shook his head. She was really doing all this over a driveway. But the best part? Nobody was buying it. Blythe had pushed her luck one too many times. The morning after her latest stunt, Reggie's phone lit up with messages. From neighbors, parents from the school, even a few HOA members who weren't in Blythe's pocket. Hey man, saw the flyer. What the hell is wrong with her? We all know she's a nightmare. She tried to fine me $200 last year for a wind chime. If she parks in your driveway again, I'll split the tow fee with you. Reggie chuckled at that last one. The best part? He didn't even have to defend himself.